Hello and welcome to That 90s Spider-Man Show, the podcast where we talk about Spider-Man the Animated Series, episode by episode. This time around, we're talking about a Marvel cartoon for the 90s, but it's probably not the one that we should have been talking about. We're talking about X-Men 97, created in the year of our Lord 2024. It's a confusing thing, but we'll get into it. We'll understand it a little bit better, and we'll ask the questions that we need to ask about the state of cartoons and the MCU and all that fun shit. As always, you'll be joined by your hosts, Jack McCoy and Heen Gray. I'm Jack McCoy, as we should have established, and over here is Heen Gray. How's it going, Heen?
Heen? I'm Heen. Oh no.
You're Heen. You didn't see that coming, motherfucker.
Has the X-Men gone woke?
That's the question that we'd always should be asking all the time, really. I mean, like...
Well, okay. The problem is, with the state of the world today, is that the irony wouldn't be clear to everyone.
Yeah.
That question should sound ridiculous, because it's the stupidest question a person could ask.
Yeah.
It was a question that many people were asking last year.
Somehow genuinely.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a more woke television program / intellectual property than the X-Men. It is literally about civil rights and the LGBT movement.
Mm-hmm.
That is literally what it's about.
Literally about bigotry and discrimination is like the text. I mean, it was Stan Lee's woke men, you know?
Yeah.
He was standing on a soapbox and yelling about racism. And then all the creators who carried on, picked up the torch, then came at it to write about oppressed groups in different ways. And then it became, you know, let's start leaning more of the queer community stuff. And, you know, it's continued to be that. Even the movies are kind of doing that, you know? Like, have you tried not being a mutant?
Have you tried, like, engaging with the world around you? The first scene of the entire, like, X-Men franchise is in a concentration camp.
Mm-hmm.
How are we not getting this, you know, people? Anyway, no, it's too woke. There were too many people of color and women in that. It should be just Cyclops and Xavier.
You know what? So
and Wolverine.
This is the other thing. Henry, as previously stated, is less online than he used to be, and less online than I am. And also, you came to this late, so I was there like as each episode came out. I think it was like April or March 2024. Now it's 2025. Henry's watched it very recently, so you missed the reaction to it at the time, which was mostly positive. But then there was the corner of the internet that was hilariously reacting to it as if
that was mostly by design.
Yeah, and I mean it's a grift. It's how you get views. Also, there are just genuinely stupid people. Also, I think there's a lot of stuff in the show where the explicit like bad guys talk in a way that is reminiscent of how a lot of, you know, right-wing talking points, you know, and so they're recognizing their own speech and they're going, "Hey, wait a minute." The bad guys saying
this. The good guys.
This is what I say.
Yeah. Why are the bad guys thinking like me? It was the X-Men who are wrong. But to be fair, like people like didn't get it with Homelander in The Boys.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this guy's clearly like a evil piece of shit. He's like, but people don't get that. So I don't have faith in the general populace to understand text or subtext. Like media literacy is not a thing. And unfortunately,
Well, I mean, just to segue into like, what was your experience of X-Men 97 this last year? Because I'm presuming you were avoiding it because you didn't want to have it spoiled. But like, did anything make it through? What did you know from people who you know and online stuff of like how the show had been and what it was about?
I knew nothing really. Like people would recommend this show to me, on the phone, and as they were going to explain what was going to happen, I would hang up on them. So I don't. I basically came into this completely blind. It was one of those things where it might have actually just been you being like, "You should watch the show," and I was at a point where I was like not watching a lot by myself, and I was like, "Yeah, okay, this is just the right time for it,"
Mhm.
you know. And I came into it, and I was a bit like, "Yeah, this is cool. I'm enjoying this," and yeah, it just was lucky that way. There are a couple of things like we'll get to that I was a bit like, "Oh, I can see this is on Disney Plus now. I can see why." And I guess like it wasn't What If, which has come out recently, and
Did
I
you
could have
watch
been
any of
watching
the
instead.
like
The
past
new
season?
season, no,
Well, it's season 3
no,
now. I didn't.
season three.
Well, so what if I had a similar thing that I had with Stranger Things season 1, where there were parts of it I liked, but in general I was disappointed by it and didn't want to see more. And then more stuff came out, and I heard a lot of people be like, "Season 1 is my favorite still," or "I really like this new season, but season 1's still really good." I mean, that might not be super common with Stranger Things. I don't know, but like that's what I've heard about What If is people being like, even the ones who really liked the new seasons being like, it's not as good as the first one. And I'm like, that's not what I need to hear to watch it because I was not a fan. I was a fan of the concept, but not the way they did it.
The execution, I think, is like the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really, really, really hated that art style.
Oh yeah, fucking Tales from Disney Plus.
Yeah, there was. Oh
Telltale
god, yeah,
games.
it was, wasn't it? But not as good as well because it doesn't have the bold lines. I think the bold lines are really
No.
important to make that art style kind of work.
Yeah.
And even then, yeah, the Tales games and like with the Walking Dead game, Telltale games are like, oh, like so much of it is people stood around talking, so it doesn't matter
Yeah.
as much. It's just like you can just see them wasting money on screen.
Yeah. You literally see a little like burning pile of dollar notes in the Dark Knight,
But then in this one, in X-Men '97,
which is crucially not one of
when
them.
they first showed like an image of what it would look like, I was a bit disappointed because it looked similar to the What If style.
Mm.
The more I think about it, the more it's like there's certain scenes where they're under certain lighting and they're doing a close up, and you can tell they're doing a bit of the 3D kind of lighting, like there's a almost like there's a
Yeah.
3D model, but they're doing it like a 2D style over the top.
It's kind of like how like bits of Futurama like work,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's like when it does that, I'm like, okay, you're looking less good now. But then I feel like for most of it, and especially in the cutscenes, oh my god, talking video games,
Oh yeah.
in the actual like action scenes, I feel like they lean heavier on the 2D, and in general, the look of this show I think is pretty flawless. I think they did a great job of they kept all the same
Like character
kind,
models and
yeah,
stuff.
same kind of character models, but then they just like put that modern money into it and then had like anime style fights in it and just like went
Yeah.
like sicko mode on the action. And I think if
Yeah.
nothing else, the action in this show just like fucking worked, and the designs of everything I just think is like amazing to look at.
I really liked it. The only place I didn't particularly like love it was in the opening credits, ironically.
Really?
That I think with the opening credits, there's an element of like they've tried to like keep the original going, but what I think they didn't, like, one thing they should have done, which they didn't do, was create the entire opening sequence from scratch.
Right.
But I think what they've done instead, you can kind of see like in the original credits where they've kind of added in like digital animation. So at parts during the opening credits, like when you see like Wolverine and jumping towards the scene, it's a bit janky, a bit clunky.
Mm.
And that was a bit where I was like, this wasn't the way to do it. You probably should have just done it entirely like, obviously like doing it handmade animation like the original like show was is out of the question. But you probably, if you had more time, you probably should have done this from scratch because I can tell this is a bit tacked on.
That is kind of like a summary of the show in a lot of ways, and I think like for me that worked really well. But that is where I think it got some criticism for, of like, because it is a show that I think is made primarily for people who liked X-Men the animated series, whether or not they've watched it since they were a kid. But for people who thought the show was cool, and then this is like, I mean, obviously it has to be that a bit because it's not a new X-Men show. It's X-Men '97. It's specifically a continuation of that show. It would be weird if it wasn't related to it, but it's very leaning on the nostalgia. But for me, I feel like what they did is they took that original show, they jettisoned some of the stuff that wasn't working, kept the stuff that did work, and then like evolved it and modernized aspects of it in a way that made sense.
Yeah.
So it felt like X-Men the animated series was its childhood, and now it's a teenager. Things are a bit more complex, and things are progressing and changing, but the core is still there. And that really worked for me. I love the opening credits in this. I'll have to watch again and think about what you were saying about the animation. But I liked the basic stuff of just like the fonts.
Yeah.
The fonts with the character intros the same. I liked that they didn't.
Yeah.
There isn't this feeling with this of like embarrassment.
We have to modernize it. Yeah.
They're not like, oh, the Cyclops text is kind of like Comic Sans, so let's not do that. They're like, no, let's just do that. You know, like
just lean into it.
This is a thing people like about the show. And then the theme itself, the music, a subtly remixed version. Like,
yeah,
honestly, they made it better. The Newton brothers who did the score, who apparently they're going to work on the new Daredevil show. So I'm interested in that.
Okay, into that.
They kind of like remixed the original and like kind of like they remade it from scratch, but they kept the elements kind of the same, but they just added a little bits of flair here and there. And then what I didn't notice until I read about it is that each episode has like slightly different remixes depending on the topic of the episode. Like I think there's like a storm in the Storm episode. There's like more like woodwind or something in it to be thematically, you know, related to Storm and stuff like that. And I'm like, there's a lot of like I think like more than me just going into it, like people should go on the X-Men '97 Wikipedia page, just look at production. And there's just a million really interesting things in there about like the level of thought they put into the show. Random little tidbits like how they used animation to show Cyclops' expressions more by changing the way light plays off his visor.
Yeah.
Little tiny things like that. And for those who haven't read the comics, like I've sporadically read X-Men comics. There's so much that happens in this show that is a comic adaptation in some way. The designs and everything, the way those things have changed, that everything you see is kind of drawn from something. There's like, I think this is the Marvel adaptation that has done the most, like, people behind the scenes cared about the original show and cared about the comics and then fused them together more so than you actually see nowadays. You know, they're kind of just more like taking concepts as a jumping off point and then doing the Marvel MCU movie version of that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you can't tell so far, I am high off this show. This show is crack cocaine to me. I was so skeptical going in because I wasn't sure about the art style, and also like I liked the idea of this show, but also I knew it was going to be pandering to me. I was like, is this going to be like a No Way Home kind of thing where it's like you're giving me the Raimi nostalgia, but I'm conscious of the fact that you're like selling me back my memories whilst defacing them at the same time. So I was super worried about it, and I was also like just generally Disney Marvel output lately and like how will be micromanaged. And they did something which is very important to me, which is they went deep on the themes and the morals. They went hard on the sci-fi, which I think is an interesting thing about X-Men that this gets right, that a lot of the movies won't. Obviously, they're superheroes, but they're not superheroes, really. This is not a superhero show. It's a science fiction show where what if this scenario happens, a world has mutants in it, which is partly the reason which I have never really liked the blending of X-Men with other Marvel characters. I'm not really excited about that with them in the MCU.
Yeah.
I don't even like it in the comics, really. It's fun to see a team up now and then, but, the X-Men world starts to make less sense to me when you've got Avengers in it, You've got superhero people who are not treated the same as them.
Yeah.
And so I think, anyway, that they went hard on the sci-fi, which I think is excellent. They did all that stuff I just said, but then most importantly, they kept it like a little bit campy.
Yeah.
The voice acting is almost all the voice actors came back, even the ones that were replaced. Wolverine still says stuff in the same kind of way, Storm still has this kind of like weird, kind of stilted kind of dialogue. Cyclops is very like straightforward way of talking. Rogue is like making all these million like ridiculous southern idioms.
Like whenever like her and Gambit were on screen together, it was like they should make one weird talking baby.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like
it will be like that baby will come out talking like that Louisiana guy in South Park.
Yeah. Or like Boomhanger and like King of the Hill. Yeah. Where it's just like and they get on dang old meal, what I'm saying. It's like
that's 100%.
It's like those two together, you're just like, oh damn.
Yeah, no, I love that they kept that because it's amped up. The melodrama is high. Everything is high. Everything is ridiculous. But it's treating it seriously. It's not making fun of itself. If a character is poking fun at a situation or making a joke, they're making a joke in character. They're saying something that character would say. They're not just quipping, for the sake of it.
Yeah.
They nailed that tone, and then they went some places I wasn't expecting them to go. The show peaks in episode 5, which we'll get into more later. And then the rest of the show I think is good, but like it could have been dog shit, Like I didn't give a shit anymore. I was like, this like gave me so much more than I was expecting or even asking for, that I feel very blessed to have this show. And I might have overhyped it to you before you saw it, but believe me, I was trying my best not to, because I wanted to tell you stuff like, this is my favorite Marvel adaptation in years. This is my favorite superhero thing in years. There's some good stuff going on, but it was a definite like confirmation. Sorry, I'm monologuing. Henry can like log off, and I'll just continue.
I'll just put my headphones down. Should I just make a tea or something?
Yeah.
you like eulogize to the people.
But
testify.
I think this is just also like confirmation for me. I was like, fuck live action, man. This and Invincible. Was it like Invincible season? What season are we?
3's coming out. Right. Because 3's coming out.
Okay, so Invincible season 2 came out not that far off from when X-Men 97 came out. And I remember being like, man, both these shows would be so much worse if they were being made with live action actors, where like every character is a huge star, and they're going through that usual studio machine,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, not to say that this show is at the end of the day a kid-friendly animation about lasers. But there's
a little bit of blood, I'll say.
There was a little bit of blood, yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of into that, actually.
There was like, I don't know, I think it's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
I don't know what the age range is for this. Like, I don't think if you watched it as a little kid, you would like, maybe if you were a very small kid, you'd find it scary or upsetting. You'd definitely be at an age where you liked it but didn't understand it. It definitely leans towards more of a young adult thing than the original did.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I think it went from like maybe like a PG to like a PG-13, if I can say. Yeah. I think the thing that it has going for it, there's two things. I think the first thing is the thing you touched upon with like Invincible, in that like the budget for this is going to be like 10% of the budget would be for like an X-Men movie. And if you look at like, there's 10 episodes of this, about 20 odd minutes each. That's like the length of like a decent like MCU movie. and plot-wise, you can see that kind of coming together. But I think that, like, just for the fact that it's animation, you have all voice actors, there's no big stars in it, that you have, like, very little interference. It also lends quite nicely to the other thing I like about this, is that, like, it feels like it's for nerds, you know? The part of the reason that, like, it's not embarrassed of itself or anything like that is because it's made. I keep thinking of, like, the Rocky Horror Picture Show when, like, Frankenfurter makes, like, Rocky in the fucking vat or whatever, and Susan Sarandon's character says, like, "Oh, I think he's too muscly," and then Tim Curry goes, "I didn't make him for you," and it's like a kind of it goes into my head quite a lot.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you turned up and you were like, "Why the fuck are there like demonic clones in this?" It would be like, "Because you're watching a fucking X-Men cartoon. Why is Patrick Stewart in space? Because you're watching an X-Men cartoon."
Yeah, and I think, like, more than any other property, like, X-Men comics are for, like, you have to be, like, really fucking into them in a way that, like, for Spider-Man you don't necessarily have to be. And, like, there was so much shit, like, as early as episode 2 or 3 when fucking Jean's clone comes back, we were like, what? And you think about the implications of what you're watching, and you're like, and a limited experience of X-Men, I'm like, this is exactly what X-Men is, and it's incredibly inaccessible to someone who's just, like, dipping into this. And I think that's to the show's credit, because it by not having to, like, be accessible, it allows itself to be what it is.
Yeah.
Like, Bo DeMaio, like, the writing team, like, the voice actors and stuff like that, it helps that, like, they know what this show was, and obviously the constraints of, like, a modern day, like, cartoon, but that's one of the virtues of being a cartoon. It's allowed to be what it is. And to be honest, like, if moving forward Disney were like, as a trade-off, we'd have all these, like, MCU movies that, like, make billions of dollars that are gonna be, like, fan service garbage, I would kind of have that as a decent trade-off for, like, decent animated series. If that's what I need to be able to have shows like this, I'm totally on board. Having it not live action is, like, a boon to it for different reasons. What we probably could, like, get into a little bit more is, I guess, like, the comparison with what we started with the X-Men the anime series, because we actually tried watching it together a few years ago, and the things that I found,
lockdown thing, right?
Yeah, it was a lockdown thing, and the thing that I found a bit, like, difficult with it was, like, it's like 90s animation, but it's like early 90s animation where it's just a little bit like season 1 of The Simpsons. If you remember, like that.
It's a bit janky, yeah.
It's a bit janky, and I found that incredibly off-putting. And
that's like a texture to it that I enjoy, but I get it.
Yeah.
I enjoy that.
Yeah.
Like, there's a smoothness here. That's what they delete from the show, really, is that, you know?
Yeah.
Part of the thesis statement of this show in the first episode is Cyclops doesn't come in and say, optic blast, and then shoot one laser, and then a man falls over, and then he runs into the next room. He's, like, shooting himself around the room with his laser.
Yeah.
He's falling out of a plane and landing with his optic blast. He's...
Yeah.
The first 5 seasons are, like, playing Tears of the Kingdom, and then this is, like, seeing someone online playing Tears of the Kingdom, taking out, like, a King Gliok in, like, 20 seconds with, like, a giant mech they've created, you know, and you're like, I didn't know you could do that in this game.
Do this. Yeah.
I think there is some great animation in the original. There's some really good... There's a fight with the Juggernaut, which is really love. They're using depth of field, and, like, people are going through walls, and people are fighting in the background. You know, like, people died to make that scene happen.
Yeah.
You know?
There's literally, like, blood on, like, the cells for when they tried to animate it.
And then a lot of the times things happen that are, like, kind of silly for that reason of just the jankiness of it. Very easy to find. Kind of like with Spider-Man the animated series, easy to find, like, silly, like, freeze frames, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a charm to it, but also, like, that you couldn't carry that over.
No, you couldn't. Talking about The Simpsons, like, the thing that I like about this, which The Simpsons doesn't necessarily have, is that, like, I feel like The Simpsons loses something for going to digital.
Yeah.
Like, there are some things I'm talking about opening credits, but like you can. One thing that sticks in my mind with the opening credits of The Simpsons, for example, is you think about the part of the opening credits where they're in the grocery shop and Maggie's going through a thingy. Everything that's happening is like normal, but like you compare that scene to the original and how much more emotive Marge is to find her baby. I think with digital, it's easy to be lazy. Is my point.
Mm.
And but like the ceiling is much higher, and you can tell that like they've put in the time. And I think generally like a criticism I've had of the MCU for a while is that like it's not that they're putting in the effort, but they're not putting in the time. Everything feels like rushed and like done to the bare bones to get it out as quickly as possible. But like this is something that like yeah, people have sat down and thought about and choreographed, and there's no oversight, there's no like crunches. It's just what can we make it? And I think that's the care really is what I really sort of enjoyed about it.
It's got a strong storyline, but animation wise, you get this sense. It reminds me in a weird way of Adventure Time,
right?
In very different ways, but you can sense the idea that there was this huge team of designers and animators who were directed very well, and everyone got added in these flourishes, and everyone was super stoked about doing it. You know, in the same way that certain video games, you watch something and like you can see that the designs of it are just like really interesting to look at, and the animations are really cool.
Yeah,
something happens like a Spider-Man 2, like the PS5 one, which is like I don't want to say it's a bad game, it's a good game, but like my problem with that and the PS4 one is that it has zero design. You know, they designed his suit. I think that was a mostly good design, and then they stopped. Then they were like, everything else looks like as close as we can get to realistic, and it became boring.
It became the Lion King remake.
Right, yeah. I think it can happen a bit with the MCU thing where you just feel like a lot of these suits are kind of like they kind of make it like I feel like what I'm seeing more than anything is like you're trying to look eye catching enough to look different, but also not so ridiculous that people will make fun of it. And also, your primary concern is making it so that this A-list actor that you're paying millions to be here isn't too uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah.
I would much rather have someone who is, I guess, like Tom Holland. I feel like Tom Holland is someone who, like, that guy doesn't need to be in, like, a green onesie, you know, doing a CGI suit. He's like an acrobatic ballet dancer and is willing to wear a tight, weird suit. Put that guy in a Spider-Man suit and have him fucking suffer on set.
Yeah.
And then Spider-Man will be in a movie. I'm saying if you're gonna play Spider-Man, you have to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that you look like Spider-Man.
Exactly.
And you're keeping the mask on.
Yeah. We're not having it like that's the whole point of the whole character is to have him as a mask. It reminds me a little bit of like Jim Carrey and The Grinch, in that like it's a really good performance, but if like 70% of that is like the suit is so hot and uncomfortable, and he wants to get it done as possible as quickly as possible. So he's like nailing all of his takes. He's like, I don't want to have to get back in this suit again. I want to do reshoots.
Yeah, you know what? They made that documentary about Jim Carrey, like as Andy Kaufman, you know, on Man on the Moon, and about how like deep into the character he got, and he actually was Andy Kaufman. I would have much rather seen that documentary about the Grinch and just like him in character as the Grinch on set, because that took a crazy amount of commitment.
Yeah,
that movie. I mean, it's watchable to me for nostalgia reasons. I don't think that movie is good, but Jim Carrey is like, that is an astounding performance.
Yeah.
Whether or not you think it's good, it's impressive.
Yeah.
He is a live action Looney Tune. He puts his whole body into it, and then he was Jim Carrey and he did all that insane makeup that was horrifying to actually do, you know?
Yeah.
He should have got a Golden Globe for it.
I like how you didn't say Oscar. You were like, he didn't deserve an Oscar. It wasn't that far, but like.
Well, I was just thinking. I'm thinking of. I'm not sure if he. I think he won. Colin Farrell in the Penguin.
Penguin, yeah.
they're both wearing fucking ridiculous suits, right? And I think like the Penguin got like not the Penguin, Colin Farrell got a Golden Globe.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I love that show.
Great show.
But like, I think what's her name? Christina Milioti.
Oh, Christina Milioti. Yeah.
She should have won. I know she was nominated. If anyone was to win from that show, it should have been her, not Colin Farrell.
She was unbelievable.
Yeah, she was crazy good, and he was good, but he was not on her level.
Sounded a bit like Bugs Bunny or like Mickey from the Rocky. Is this the way to Albuquerque?
Oh man, he's so. I love it. He was cartoonish in that, but it was like it was ridiculous at the same time.
Yeah.
But anyway, like I feel we're getting off topic, but where will be?
The main point was like labors of love. I think.
Yeah.
I say to you all the time that I think like a bad movie made 20, 30 years ago is better than a good movie made now, because everyone in that movie was trying. And I think even when you have a bad movie, it's enjoyable when you can tell that everyone in it is trying to make something good.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the problem that I have, not only with like MCU movies, but if you look at something like, I don't know, like Madam Web or like Morbius, you can tell on a visceral level when like no one gives a shit about what they're making. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's like hundreds of thousands of people listening to this out there in the world who are like trying to create and put themselves on like a Marvel movie or like a TV show. And there's so many people who are privileged to make these things. And it's especially grating to see them not give a fuck when there's hundreds of thousands of people behind them being like, I would kill for this opportunity, and you don't seem to even care that you're here.
Yeah.
And I think that's the refreshing thing about this, is that like you can tell that everyone wanted to do it. They were like interested in like creating an interesting story. They'd read the comics. There was no like big budget like interference. There wasn't a committee telling them what they could and couldn't do. And I think it's like the strength of the show is that like they did the story that they wanted to do at the outset, and everything fits together and doesn't feel awkward. Even like the cameos in the show were things where I was like, in the moment I was like, is that going to be annoying? And they did it in a way that I was like, the only one that was kind of a bit annoying was like the one about like where you see like them on the TV with like Peter and Mary Jane, and I'm like, you don't need to do that shit. But like beyond that, I was a bit like, yeah, this was not like an annoying level. And I miss when like comic book properties were allowed to do this, you know?
Mm.
And there's actually like a little subversive joke they made towards the end. Do you know when like Cable's like joined the X-Men and like Cyclops like throws him a suit, and he goes like, "What's this?" And then Cyclops says something to the effect of, "What, we're expecting like black leather?"
Yeah,
and it was
the
really like
of the X-Men 2000 line.
Yeah, and I think that's just like an interesting full circle thing, and it's a version really of like how we've come forward in comic book properties. And I think it was, I think more movies should get stuffed in lockers. You know, I wish like losers would engage with this stuff more, because that's how the good stuff is made.
I was trying to find it, I couldn't find it. There's a quote by David Lynch, also R.I.P.
Yeah,
pouring out for a real one.
The goat. I was going for the goat, but yeah, for the real one.
Mm-hmm. He had some quote which was like something about like you can't make movies for everyone. If you make a movie for everyone, you're making a bad movie, basically. And I think there's an element of that is when you get to a certain size of movie, certain size of budget, in order to make that money back, it needs to be for the most amount of people possible. Yeah. So it needs to get broader and broader and broader. I mean, Spider-Man is our bread and butter, so I'll use him as an example. The reason Spider-Man got popular in the first place was because it was like, hey, are you like a bullied loser who has bad luck and who feels like the world is against him? What
Put that gun down. Step away from the post office. Here's a show for you.
Yeah. I mean, like, what if you, like, is a power fantasy, we'll develop that in different ways, but, like, that's kind of, like, a starting point. And the X-Men is like, hey, are you oppressed by society? What if you had the power to fight back? But also, how would you fight back? Do you show more mercy than the people who are mistreating you? And you start asking questions about that. these are like specific ideas. And then when you zoom that out further and further and further, you're like, well, we can't talk about these kind of topics because that's going to alienate this group, and we can't do this because of this. And then more and more fingers are in the pies. Eventually, you kind of sand everything down until you watch a movie and you're like, this wasn't really like doing the thing that I like this for. And I say with Spider-Man, like I got like very burnt out on Spider-Man stuff.
Extremely. Yeah.
I read so many comics since we started this podcast, really. Which was interesting because you discover so much in the comics that you didn't even realize they'd done, that aren't part of the public consciousness on who Spider-Man is. But I was going back recently and reading, I talk about this endlessly, so I probably brought it up in this podcast before, but in the early 2000s, J. Michael Straczynski and John Romita Jr. worked on a run of Amazing Spider-Man. I think it starts in like issue 30 or something of volume 2.
Uh-huh.
I was reading that.
Yeah.
That series starts. Peter Parker goes back to his old high school, becomes a teacher. And then all the issues are about, like, he has, fantastical adventures, team ups, supervillains, all that stuff. But also, most of the stuff is about Peter Parker notices that there's a really smart student who's underachieving, and he tries to help them out for 2 issues. He finds out someone's got trouble at home, and then as Spider-Man finds out the brother is involved in crime and tries to help them out, and then reevaluates how he thinks about the thugs he beats up. It was like really mature, interesting storytelling, and I was like, damn, this is amazing, and this is not anything close to what you will get adapted into anything. And I think with X-Men 97, there was an element of, it is obviously like rushing through a lot of stuff. There are episodes of the show which are like very long arcs in the comics, but they're just making it half an episode,
Yeah.
This is kind of a spark notes of like, this is what good Marvel comics are like, these crazy concepts and melodrama fused together. I mean, we've already kind of jumped into spoilers, but like, here's your point to bow out. If you want to go watch the show, it's good. Go watch it.
Yeah.
But the clone stuff with Jean and Madeline, that concept, because I didn't really know much about Madeline prior. I knew just the basics of it. The moral situation, right, of Scott being in this situation where the obvious thing to do, right, is clone turns up at the door. Oh no, use the real one, but it turns out the outsider is the clone, right? That's the easy way to do the story. But doing that and then being like, actually, the one that's been with you is the clone, and the one that had this baby is the clone. The one that you've spent an unknown portion of your life with is the clone. But then this other person is the actual original. And then, but they're sharing the memories, and then like, what does that mean? Who is the real person? Like, is the clone automatically lesser than because they're not real, but then they're a real person for all intents and purposes? So like, that's a really cool idea. And believe it or not, that's what happens in the Clone Saga in Spider-Man, which is notorious as being bad, and there's a lot of bad in it. But the bad thing about it is that it became so drawn out and complicated, and then they wrap it up in the most insane, stupid way.
I guess like Game of Thrones.
Yeah. The central thing that's interesting about the Clone Saga is the clone turns up, right? Ben Reilly, the clone, has to deal with the idea that he is Peter Parker, but he doesn't have the right to his life, and how horrifying that is. But then Peter Parker, at a certain point, is discovered that Peter Parker is the clone and Ben Reilly is the original.
Right.
Loses his mind. Like, he goes completely off the rails, and I think of that. There's like a panel of him like jumping towards Ben Reilly to fight him, yelling something like, "You can't steal my life." This really cool moral situation because they're both good people.
Yeah.
Dealing with an insane situation. And I think that's the fun thing about comics, is like a crazy sci-fi scenario and then actually playing it out dramatically with like how these characters would feel. They're not just going like, oh, well, how do we solve this plot problem?
Yeah.
Like in this, they're like,
yeah.
damn, like, you know, you're gonna get like Jean and Madeline having separate scenes talking to people about how they feel about this situation, you know?
Yeah.
Which I don't know how that played out for you because I'm more desensitized to insane comic shit. So how did you feel about the fact that like very early on in this show they're like, oh yeah, here's a clone.
It was like I feel like I've been exposed to comics enough that I'm like, oh yeah, this is X-Men. This is what I expect from X-Men. One of my favorite parts of the whole like clone thing with like Jean and Madeline and Scott is at the point where like he's having like a psychic like connection and like you think he's talking to like Jean, but then Jean
Yeah.
comes in and is like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And like Scott has this like look on his face like he's been caught watching porn.
Yeah.
And like the whole way through, he's kind of like, well, "Can you blame me, really? Like, I'm not gonna stop. Like, I know what I'm doing
Yeah.
is wrong, but I mean, look, it's two genes. What am I supposed to do?"
Yeah.
And yeah, and then similarly with that episode, I think it is 6 or 7, where like having not like seen how the original run ended, because I only watched the first season or so of the original X-Men run, but like the revelation that Charles Xavier was alive and he's walking, and the show doesn't explain anything. It's just like, oh yeah, he's in space now. Oh, he's
Yeah.
gonna go back.
Yeah.
And that whole episode, I imagine, is an entire comic run. They've like
Right.
skated over entirely. Where it's like, oh yeah, he's in space now, he's back. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, you don't need to know any more than that. And I'm
Mm.
like, yeah, I dig that stuff. And there's like a depth. The show kind of sends you some concepts, but like the characters don't react to it more than like that's a problem. And so therefore, like you don't have time to go, what the fuck, as you
Mm.
should be. I think as someone who like has like a cursory like experience of comics, I can imagine people going like, what the fuck?
Mm.
And I think that's great. I think they should be again, yeah, slightly inaccessible. You shouldn't really fully
Yeah.
completely know what's going on.
The pacing of this is fast, but it doesn't really feel like that to me. For instance, the scene where Beast does the test to find out if the clone is real or whatever, and then he's like, well, actually, according to these tests, Jean, you're the clone. And then she's like, what the fuck? And then Scott is like, not defending her.
Yeah.
Because he's immediately like, you can tell he's like, well, Beast is like the smartest guy, so he's right.
Yeah.
I've got the facts, so what the fuck am I meant to do? You know, and I'm like, they are like escalating past this, like they introduced the idea and everyone had their immediate reaction and stuck with it, and then 5-10 minutes later, she has now transitioned into a different character, you know?
Yeah.
And it's
like the Kubler-Ross like cycle took like she went from like denial to like anger to depression to bargaining, and it's done. And you're like, okay, cool. You just see that happen like through her face, and it's like this is a part of the story now. Yeah, the clone's gone off to Genosha. Don't like, how are you not following?
I think it worked really well, but I think part of it is like as simplistic as it can be. Like I think the writing is really, really, really good at exposition.
Yeah.
On rewatch, that was more clear of just how good they set things up. They do an interesting thing that the original X-Men movie did with Wolverine, where you have a new student come to the school, and that's how you get to introduce everyone in a way that feels natural.
Yeah.
And you introduce all the elements of the show. But then they do other interesting things, like in the Jubilee, what's it called? Motendo episode. It's like you get to see past adventures.
Yeah.
Via this like video game recreation. Technically, you get Jean's origin story because there's a brief moment where she's flashing back to like seeing Professor X. You know, you get by the end you get to see Magneto and Professor X meeting for the first time.
Yeah.
Most of the characters kind of get an episode where their character is the focus, and you find out things about them. So then, when things happen, it matters, you know, like by the end, when Rogue is kind of.
She goes rogue.
When she goes rogue, you're feeling her grief and anger.
Yeah.
Like, I think they set up things really well so that even when it's speeding through them, you're getting all the stuff you need.
Yeah.
Maybe if it was live action, that would feel goofier or something. So they have to pace things differently. In this format, it worked fine. It kind of makes it very easily watchable. Like, when I put it on, I'd already rewatched some of the episodes. I rewatched first 5 again before we recorded this, and I kind of put it on just to refamiliarize myself with it. But I didn't expect to be as drawn in as I was watching some of them for the third time. And damn, this goes hard.
It does go very hard. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you how you felt about the emotion of the show, because it's very melodramatic, and like we said, the pacing is very fast. I'm coming into it a bit differently with some like comic familiarity, and also I rewatched the entirety of the animated series before 97. So it's very much like on my brain. Emotion wise, did you like feel it, or were you feeling like disconnected but like, oh, this is cool?
A mixed bag actually. Like the Genosha stuff I thought would hit me harder than it ended up hitting me.
Mm-hmm.
The whole like wiping out thing, I was like, okay, I can see not necessarily see what this is going, but I was like, this is the kind of thing that like I would have expected to be hit more at, but we didn't really spend as much time in Genosha as I thought we were going to.
Yeah.
And like the thing that worked for that is more the shock value, especially when you think about like the character deaths. And I thought the character death was done really well, and like Rogue's
Gambit.
like reaction, Gambit, Gambit, like he bites it, Cajun style. So I think that was done pretty well. I thought how Rogue like dealt with the grief of it and how the other characters treated her. Like I'm thinking specifically of like the part where she like finally breaks down and Nightcrawler's there, and then all the rest of the team come in and it's like, oh, you're okay. I think a bit later on, like basically, was it Nightcrawler who basically says like she's grieving, but she's not grieving the way that she probably should be grieving.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like a really cool way of being like, okay, this character's changed by what's gone on with them. And something that hit me probably more than I expected to was the stuff with Storm.
Oh, really?
As you know, Storm was like basically the most powerful like X-Man, as it were, and they Beast is basically like your powers are coming back, baby, and she just leaves. She's just off, you know. And it's just treated very like you really like you sit with her for like the strong character and the stuff they do with that. Like I wasn't expecting her back, but I was also glad they brought her back because it was an interesting way of looking at like a very powerful character, but like made her very vulnerable, very like humanized, and all that stuff.
She had like a rom-com going on with Forge.
Yeah, the little Forge rom-com, complete with like weird owl demon, you know.
Oh yeah,
and that stuff.
That was something I had no. There were a couple of things that I knew about in this show, but I didn't know a lot about. Like I know who Bastion is, but I don't know much about him.
Yeah.
The adversary, I was like, I have no fucking clue. I was Googling this like, oh shit, this actually happened to the course? Okay, sure.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I was here for it, you know? And like similarly, like the stuff with like Cable. And I knew like the conflict of it. I knew like the bones of it. But I think the way it was done here, there were little moments of like Nathan or Cable, whatever, like clearly like looking for this and like really passionate about it. And you can see like the family that they would have been, and like stuff like that. I thought worked pretty well. I think the emotional beats, for the most part, I would say that they worked. I actually don't think there's much of here that like doesn't work. The only thing I might say is that like I think this is maybe a sickness of having watched a lot of like the latter half of the Fox X-Men movies, but like as much as it's like a fine, satisfying conclusion to an X-Men story to have Magneto basically be like, fuck all y'all, and then Xavier having to bring him back, it's something I've seen over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But I do think it was done better than it has been in some movies, in that like the thing that worried me the most is I thought that Magneto was right. And at that point, you know that everyone is fucked.
Yeah.
And he goes like sicko mode. And I was also waiting for the Phoenix to show up. That was a bit where I was like, the way we're going to resolve this is the Phoenix, really? And I was a bit like, I wish there was another way that could have gone rather than waiting for Jean to do the thing that she does.
There's the point when they split off into two teams, right? And I think all the stuff with Magneto works a lot better.
Yeah, than the stuff with their Bastion.
Yeah.
Like the Cable stuff as well, and like the Sinister shit.
Yeah, I really like the setup for the Sinister stuff more than the end of the Sinister stuff. I think by the end, it felt more like the classic series where Sinister was kind of a goofy character.
Yeah.
Whereas at the start, he's like horrifying and also like just like a piece of shit. Just like more so. There's a lot of bad guys in the X-Men universe that are awful, but Mr. Sinister, I always forget that he's human. You know?
Yeah.
He seems like an evil mutant, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they say it when they first introduce him. It's like Morph explains him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this guy like made himself immortal by experimenting on mutants and taking parts of them for himself and stuff." And then you're like, and he's spending his whole life doing this, and it's just like, you are just like a horrifying mad scientist serial killer.
Yeah.
That just what he does to Jean and Scott is horrible.
Beyond awful. Like the worst thing you can possibly fucking do.
And even the stuff he didn't intend, like there's a bit where like obviously it's sad, but also it's a very comic book thing to like do we have a baby, we need this baby to be a new character, so let's put him in a time travel so that he can come back later as a cool adult character.
Yeah, you know? Let's warm him up.
Yeah, there's usually some kind of thing like that happens, or like some age thing happens that makes them like Wonder's kids in the comics coming back and becoming their own heroes, you know?
Yeah.
But at a certain point,
or like Mark's brother in Invincible. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's going to be stuff like that in this. The thing that just like hit me on rewatch was just like Cyclops being like, "My dad abandoned me," and my whole thing about being a parent was that I wasn't going to do this, but now I am forced to abandon my child. And then just...
And he's not happy about it.
And I'm like, the idea, like anyone, like whether you have kids, intend to have kids, whatever, I think most people, when they go and having kids, they're like, I'm going to be doing things different to how my parents did it. And if you had something that traumatic of your parent abandoning you and spending your life that, the idea of being forced to go through that again, you know, it's just like, but be the perpetrator. It's like, woof, that's like heavy.
It's heavy shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. I mean, interesting thing you say about the emotion, right? The Genosha stuff hit me really hard, and it's hit me hard every time I've seen it on rewatch. However, the Storm stuff is actually the weakest part of the show for me. I don't think it's like bad. It's quite a nice change of pace. You spend just a while of them talking and hanging out. It's very like psychological and about connection rather than like much like world plot stuff. So I think it's needed in the show. I didn't really feel much for it, you know? I felt more for Storm when she first loses her power and she's like, I can't feel the wind. And like the grief she has for not being connected to nature, like I was like, that hit me, but the rest of it didn't work as well. And I'm just curious, like, if there's anything in particular about it that reason why you felt like it struck an emotional chord.
I think maybe the psychological aspect of it. I think it's quite similar in a way to like what happens to Peter in Spider-Man 2, in the sense of like a lot of it, like you assume is like lost to you, but a lot of it is psychological. And I especially like the combination of it. They're in the mine, and like obviously Stormers are very claustrophobic, and they put her in this situation where like she's having like all this bad shit happen to her. She's without her powers, and it's only in that moment where she like rises above it and she grows above it. And I just found that very like just very visceral in the way that like Spider-Man 2, I think, has those visceral moments where you're like, oh yeah, I get it. This is who I am, and I've understood myself on a deeper level now. And I think that stuff was like, really effective. Like she just fly off and leave Forge to die, but like he's fine. He comes back. That was the thing. I was like, where are you going?
It helps to bring your characters to rock bottom.
Yeah.
And not just in a cruel way, but in a way that makes them examine some part of themselves, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's what the show does generally good, is like all these situations they're in causes these characters to reflect. And I think that's what you don't get in a lot of movies. There's no like reflection on anything, you know?
Yeah. There's no real writing in that way.
The better ones, right? Got like Black Panther, Killmonger just being like right, and T'Challa taking that in and changing how he acts because of Killmonger's viewpoint.
Yeah.
In the first
Iron Man 3.
Iron Man 3, yeah. No, he changes as a character.
Yeah.
And he loses something he's dependent on in order to rediscover what's important. You think of the first Spider-Man movie, I think people are like, oh, what's the climax of that movie? It's Green Goblin holding Mary Jane in the cable car and being like, choose, hero. But like, that's not really the climax of the movie. The climax of the movie is I had a father and his name was Ben Parker.
Yeah.
Cut to the meme of like the end game crowd reaction. Like that's the pop-off moment because like that's the arc.
Yeah.
The you're not my father to he is my father and he's still with me kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that stuff was just like really cool. I think just like being able to like turn plots and narratives and characters on a piece of dialogue like that. I think that stuff is really interesting. The Geonosis stuff, I think, didn't make me cold as much as it was like, no, they're not gonna let these people have this. I was expecting this place to blow up at some point because I was like, look at this utopia for mutants.
I think
and I know enough from like American history that like they don't allow minorities to have things. So I was like, this place is blowing up.
The thing that works about that episode for me, I think the writing is good, but I also think that episode is directed incredibly. And I know you've literally just watched it like this week, but I recommend you go back and watch that sometime, knowing exactly what's going to happen. I mean, even like, I think in like the first episode, Jean has a vision, and there's certain parts of it that you can see making sense for what happens. The pacing of the episode is so good because you get the first inkling of something happening is Cyclops and Jean having this argument, and then Jean's nose starts bleeding, and she like gets like a spike of like something, and then they cut away from her and they don't address it. Oh, what's happening? And they go to other stuff, and then they have Madeline hearing something, following, and then they cut away again, and then Madeline goes, and then she has this conversation with Cable, and they have that great moment of like her realizing who he is.
Yeah,
which I think was done like in a really nice, simple way. The music, like having the gala as this big celebration, and then it turning into like the music starts shifting as they start introducing this concept, and it's like this just feeling of dread comes in, and then you got the fireworks, and then the first explosion kind of blends in with the fireworks a bit. Suddenly everything kind of like goes to shit. And it's right after like Rogue has this realization, so like the emotional peak is sort of hit as well. That whole last sequence, I think, obviously the Gambit stuff was great. I loved that. I'll get into it in a second. What appears to be Magneto's death, I think, was handled extremely well because you got this thing of like this whole time, like the like Magneto having like the flashbacks blending in of like the Holocaust, but then also he'd previously made that promise to Leech about protecting him, so then going to save them and then being with them, and then like just his last, at that point may think is his last act being to protect them and save them, and then saying in German, don't be afraid, to him. And then the way they frame it as well, you see Magneto's eyes framed between his fingers, and then Rogue's eyes framed between the shards of like metal that are protecting her, and they're just making eye contact as they kind of share this moment of like, I'm about to die.
Yeah.
And then Rogue immediately going in for the kill, full of rage. I was feeling that anger, It worked so well. Following that up with like Gambit saving, which is more tragic because it's at this point where he doesn't know that she chose him.
Yeah.
That to me was a redemption thing for me, because not redeeming me, redeeming Gambit for me, because I hated Gambit. Like I thought he was cool when I was a little kid. Then after that, I was like, this guy just like, I found him very irritating, and also
he's super irritating.
He's going so hard on like being the cool guy,
Yeah.
and also like kind of being in the old show being really condescending and sexist and
He's kind of smug. Yeah.
Yeah, he feels like he's this like, I don't know. He just felt like a creep, and I was like, I don't.
Yeah.
He's not the guy I'm watching this show for. And then I really liked him in this series. I think they wrote him really well. They balanced. They kept that personality, but they made him more likable.
Mm-hmm.
He went out in such a fucking cool way.
Yeah.
You know, the whole like, you know, the name's Gambit, remember it?
Yeah.
Doing the sacrifice, and then
yeah.
Rogue finding him and saying like I can't feel you. Oof. Like that it got me all teary.
Yeah.
I felt ridiculous for an X-Men cartoon, but I was like, man, I'm getting bodied by this show.
Yeah. I can see that. And it wasn't quite to the level of teary, but I was like, yeah, like the thing with like Rogue saying I can't feel you, because I wasn't sure whether or not it was Gambit who was on the ground, because like he's basically like they kind of not film, but they frame it in a very interesting way. I wasn't sure at that point whether or not he survived. I know it sounds obvious to say now, but like the initial like I guess stabbing of Gambit was in the side, and I was like, oh, he can survive that.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure at that point whether he died. Then I saw that scene, and I was like, okay, it's like confirmed now, and it really hit me a lot harder than initially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think really well executed. And
you with this kind of stuff, the usual thing is to do the death scene and then walk it back.
Yeah.
Or like it turns out it didn't happen, and they do like a little bit of that in this show. You know, at least seems like Magneto dies and he doesn't. You think Xavier is dead, he isn't. You think that
it's just in space.
You think that Wolverine could be killed at one point and he isn't. But that was also another point of being hitting it home. It was like there are stakes, you know? And I think that was important to the show. And I thought it feels like a sacrifice, because at that point I do miss Gambit, which I never thought I'd ever fucking say. But you miss his presence, but you also like there's this, like in real life when someone dies who you're close to, there's like a lingering loss, because Rogue didn't get to say what she needed to say to him. You know?
Yeah. You can feel Rogue carrying that with her.
Yeah.
Throughout the rest of the show. You know? She has a big moment of grief, but it's not like she goes back to being normal or she like finds someone else. It's just like she's just like a low level of pissed the whole way through. Nightcrawler like joins the cast of like heroes at this point. The kinetics of like how fights go, the energy of how fights go. I feel like the show grieves along with you, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, and I think it helps that they balance it, because there's the sinister episode, which is like thematically it's like a horror episode. It's like a haunted house plus evil scientist and clones and like sci-fi identity crisis, and everything goes really wrong on a personal level for Cyclops and Jean. And then you have episode 5, but then in between them you have like a Jubilee episode where they're in video games and they're reliving past adventures, and there's some serious stuff to it, but it's also like a change of pace, and a lot of like the pure like joy and fun is in that episode, you know?
Yeah.
There's like Mojo is a very funny, crazy villain.
just the worst guy. Oh, what do you think of the new like musician they bring in, the Roberto guy?
Yeah, Sunspot.
I
don't think he was amazing, but I think he was a good like tool of the story. His perspective is an interesting one to have, which is the one of I am a mutant, but I'm closeted. I don't think the fight is worth my time.
Yeah.
And I think like, you know, the idea of fighting for our rights is kind of like, I don't know, a negative thing. And I just want to get
especially for a position of privilege. Yeah. He's in a position of privilege as well, which makes it interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it like kind of went anywhere with it. I
wish he'd done more with him, actually.
And I think he eventually goes with Magneto, right? And I wasn't sure if I like totally bought that.
No, I didn't buy that. I think it's just more like for like Jubilee to.
Other than the idea that they needed another person to join Rogue, but I think you needed someone to be with Jubilee.
Yeah, you need to get things for her to do.
And he was a good like sounding board. Like he was constantly there so that other people could explain to him what the X-Men are about.
Yeah, that's true.
A new student, so he's learning all the ropes, but then also he doesn't understand what they're about. He doesn't believe in mutant liberation, so they explain it to him. And so I think it was very useful. I think it also just like the animation of his powers looked very cool.
Looked very cool. I'll give you that.
But other than that, I don't know anything about the character. I think some people were upset about the way he was adapted. There's some difference between him and the comic, but I'm not really familiar enough to say anything about that. I guess like the other character who I think gets the least amount of characterization is actually Wolverine.
I'm actually thankful for that.
People were saying, I remember as it was going on, seeing the reactions every week. When it got to like episode 8, people were like being like, damn, is Wolverine not going to get his time to shine? And especially on rewatch, I'm thinking like, I think he did get some stuff, but he gets some stuff as a supporting character for Jean. You get his perspective on things. Like I like it when Magneto is on trial, and then like people have different viewpoints on it, a bit conflicted, and then like Wolverine is like, fuck this guy.
Yeah,
this guy should be in jail. I fucking hate Magneto. And you're like, cool, yeah. Or like Jean and Cyclops leaving, and he understands why, but he's also like acts abandoned.
He sees it coming before they even announce it.
Yeah, and
he knows they have to do it.
He has like a nice friendship with Morph as well that I liked. That a lot of people picked up on as being like implied to be slightly romantic.
Like if Wolverine was like comfortable with his sexuality enough, he might like pursue it, but he's more like weird about it.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, I'm not up to date on my X-Men, but I'm pretty sure in a recent run they like make Jean, Cyclops, and Wolverine a throuple.
Of course they do. Yeah.
Either way, I think like Wolverine is not like he's out there. I think it's not out of character for him and Morph to have a thing, but I think he has some stuff going on, but he's a supporting role in it. And I think that's exactly where Wolverine should be, because it happened in the movies, just as it did in the comics. Wolverine is the most overexposed Marvel. I mean, Spider-Man 2, in a way, there's just too much Wolverine. He was too popular. He got everywhere. It was annoying.
Yeah.
And in the movies, it became the Wolverine show.
Yeah.
After 3 solo movies and a nice payoff, they brought him back for Deadpool versus Wolverine, which is the worst time I have had watching a movie in quite a long time.
Someone made over $1 billion, but whatever.
Yeah, fuck that movie. I know a lot of people liked it, but
they're wrong.
It's okay to have bad taste.
It's okay to be wrong.
Yeah. It's okay to like a piece of shit movie that signposts the end of civilization as we know it.
Well, but that's maybe it's just not for us. Maybe we don't like movies like that, but you do, and that's a valid standpoint to have, and we don't judge you that much.
But anyway, Wolverine taking a backseat is exactly what you should do. Also, I think that part of that criticism is a reaction to assuming he is at the front and center of the de facto, rather than this actually Rogue is going to get a lot of characterization. Jean's going to get stuff. Cyclops is going to get stuff. Xavier's going to get stuff. And I hope in the future they continue to do that. And they're like, hey, Nightcrawler's got some stuff now. And what's going on with Psylocke?
Let's see what fucking Kitty Pryde is up to or some shit. Right. And I kind of prefer that.
She even in the show? I don't remember.
She was not in the show. I imagine if they do a season 2, she'll probably be in the show again. And
she was in the X-Men Evolution show, which I haven't seen for a while, but I remember being good when we were kids. It was 2004, 5 or something.
X-Men passed me over as a child. I'm gonna be honest with you. My first exposure was X-Men: The Last Stand, and I was like, I'm good. I'm very good.
Man, yeah, that's such a bad. That's the problem. As a comic fan, is seeing when they adapt stuff, and you're saying I'm a Spider-Man fan, and then people being like, "Oh yeah, this is what you're a fan of all these movies," and it's like, no, that's not the primary thing. There's other stuff going on over here, guys. You guys they're not,
Yeah. Is this your king?
Yeah. Speaking of like adaptations, like I think there's quite a few going on here. But the Genosha thing is a comic thing. It was like a different villain who did it.
Yeah.
So I knew it was going to happen. It's what I associate with Genosha as a casual X-Men comics fan. Is like, oh, Genosha, the place that got like
decimated,
decimated, and it was like a huge, horrible thing for them to deal with. So when things were going really well, I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is probably going to happen. But it still hit me hard. And also, I think an interesting thing behind the scenes that I think helps with it is that Rodemayo, who, those who don't know, was the past tense, was the showrunner and like head writer of the show. He's a gay black man, and he brought in his own experiences into the show, which is why I think a lot of it rings true. And one other thing is he actually saw that fucking blew me away to read is that the episode 5, like the way he told it, was inspired by his experience because he was a regular at the Pulse nightclub in the US.
Where like that guy shot up?
Yeah.
Was it like in New Orleans or something like that?
No, it was in Orlando. So it's in Florida.
Yeah, that's it.
But yeah, it was for those who don't know, it was a gay club, and someone went in and shot a bunch of people. So it was like this horribly tragic event, but it was also like had this extra tragedy of like this is a place where people felt free to be themselves, and they were celebrating and at the peak of like enjoying themselves, in a private sort of community space. And that's when the violence of the outside world and bigotry came in and did something horrifying. He was in that community. He knew people who had been there that night and stuff like that. And then when you watch that episode thinking that, and then there's a gala and everyone's celebrating and everyone there is a mutant, the future is looking bright, and then this happens, it adds another layer to it, which is even more tragic. And the sort of thing that I never would have predicted that X-Men 97 would be drawing from that kind of thing, The original show did deal with like, anti-mutant stuff a lot, and there were pretty heavy things in that, but like it was a lot more black and white. And I think that was the thing that was part of this revival, was the world being less black and white. Like immediately having Magneto come in and being like, he's your ally now. And then the show kind of doing the was Magneto right thing.
Yeah.
So that's is more complicated. But then also Xavier is kind of like he is Martin Luther King basically as this kind of martyr for a cause. And then he fucks that up,
Yeah.
And so he's like, not as inspirational a figure. And then all these like tough choices. Rogue kills a guy.
Tries to, at least, yeah.
Well, the thing is, I think he does die. Like he comes back as a sentinel, but she does kill Oliver Trask. Yeah. And she definitely intends to kill him. And everyone's like,
it's 100% murder.
Don't do it. And she's like, I'm gonna do it. And like that's like you get it, but that's like another morally complicated thing. I think they did all that stuff really well. I think maybe my favorite episode is episode 2, the one with the trial of Magneto, where every single thing that Magneto says in that episode is a quote.
Yeah.
Like a thing that's worth remembering.
Yeah. It's just dropping knowledge.
I am trying to be better. Please. Do not make me let you down.
Just, oh my god. I mean, he has a few of them. Like in episode 5, like there's a thing where like the UN lady is like, not really happy with the idea of a terrorist becoming a leader. And he's like, oh, it's funny how you say that, yet you allow so many of your leaders to become terrorists. And it's like, geez.
Yeah. Here we go, hard Magneto.
I think at one point the UN says something and then he like responds like, "Spare me your soundbite indignation."
Yeah.
I don't know. Everything he says in that scene was great, but that was also a good episode for showcasing the other viewpoint of the anti-mutant stuff.
Yeah.
I found them quite scary, to be honest. And I think in X-Men, it's always harder. The Friends of Humanity people who are the Sentinels and stuff, for me, were always one of the least interesting. Because it's like, you got interesting power sets, complicated histories and relationships with the X-Men, all these different villains in that area. And then you have the humans who are just like, oh, they hate mutants. And when I was a kid, I was always like, those are the episodes where I'm wanting to skip. But here, I thought they did a good job articulating their viewpoint in a way that was kind of scary because it was very familiar.
Yeah.
And it's like the, what's your name called? Executioner.
Yeah.
He.
Oh.
I knew you would take that one. He says this line where he's like, it's not just that we think you are lesser than us. The thing that I really hate about you is the whining. Like the fact that you guys think you have it hard. Everything he's saying, you're like, oh my god, this is like some guy on Twitter,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, that's what people were getting mad at, is that they were seeing stuff that they said, but this guy's saying it about mutants instead of like, DEI or whatever.
Yeah.
I thought that stuff was like fucking great. They made them really hateable villains.
Just like the fucking worst.
Also not two-dimensional. The part of them that is two-dimensional is the same thing that is like two-dimensional in real life, which is deep down you think these people are less than you in some way.
Yeah.
And that informs how you speak and act.
Yeah.
But here they kind of
like your identity revolves around the fact that they're lesser than you.
Yeah.
Like that's your reason to your raison d'etre. Really.
Yeah. I think they did a good job of articulating how people feel about that. And then how that makes, the X-Men feel. And then there's some cool stuff like when Cyclops kind of like loses his temper a bit, where he's like,
oh, in the interview, you mean?
Yeah, well, he's like, you know what, we are better than you.
Yeah. Why am I trying to pretend like we're like the same?
I'm constantly defending my own existence.
Yeah.
As just a baseline. That's all I'm doing. But I'm like giving you guys all this leeway, and I'm forgiving you, and I'm giving mercy to you, knowing that you would never do that for me.
Yeah.
And he's like, so yeah, we are better because we're rising above it, And I'm like, that's a really interesting response to that,
Yeah.
Did you have any? I just monologued a bit again because I just love it. But did you have any sort of like general thoughts on that?
I mean, my initial thoughts were a bit like about how I felt about like Ulysses Claw in Black Panther, where I'm like, this is exaggerated, but this is based on very real people in very real sort of like mindsets. And like I do agree, like the humans are like some of the most compelling villains because it's not necessarily that you empathize with them, but like you can kind of draw those parallels between like people in real life and people in the show. I think it's Boulevard Trask who kind of says like, do you know how it feels to be obsolete? And it's not, you don't like feel they're justified in what they're doing, and also doing it out of fear. I think it's really interesting, especially in like today's times, to think about how people behave when they're confronted with a different kind of people and like they're becoming more part of society, and your standing society is therefore diminished. I think it kind of makes, I mean, this is probably the point of the comics, but it kind of makes more obvious like the psychological like struggles that these people are having, and it makes their actions more painful because you know people who think like this, and what I'm curious about is that I guess in the absence of a Magneto or a Phoenix or whatever, how can we take these lessons and kind of apply them to a world where there's Sentinels everywhere, basically?
And there's no X-Men.
There's no X-Men.
Well, there are X-Men, but they're like more like the Morlocks. They're like to like live in tunnels.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the interesting thing is that I hope that people watch this show and it gets them thinking about that kind of thing. Because I think it's always good to think about this kind of stuff. especially if it's not something that you think about in your day-to-day life. That's one of the purposes of X-Men, you know?
Yeah.
Like Stanley kind of like tricking 60s America into thinking about
civil rights.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it is super interesting, and I'm very glad they went into that aspect.
You mutants lost at birth too. The Neanderthal 2.0. Buggy stillborns flapping upstream, draining yourselves dry so that the tide can more easily drown you. See me. The future's tide.
The last two kind of aspects of the show that I think we haven't mentioned yet is Professor Xavier and Bastion.
Right.
Which is more the second half of the show. Xavier, my personal take is that I liked his stuff in space, but it really teed up the, man, it's going to be a shit show when this guy comes back. And then he came back in the show, and then I felt like the show then became all about the plot, which was interesting, but he got his cool thing with Magneto. But in terms of the X-Men and Xavier interacting, I wanted to see more scenes. I wanted Cyclops and Xavier to have a long conversation because there was a lot to talk about, and I feel like they didn't jump into it that much.
They had like one conversation with like him and Jean and Cyclops where they were like, basically like, why did you fake your death and why did you give off things to Magneto? And he basically said what they thought he was going to say, which was, I wanted you guys to have your own life. And they kind of like put it down, they don't really pick it up again. Yeah. And another thing that I thought they would do more of is like this kind of concept of a false flag.
Right.
Because they basically, I think it's Bastion who basically like leaks the fact that Magneto's alive. And you think it's going to be more of a thing of like, wow, they faked the death of their leader to like gain sympathy. And you think it would become more of a thing. And when I talk about maybe the ending with Magneto and like how it's very classic X-Men, I was actually kind of like disappointed they didn't do more with that. And maybe in season 2 they'll do a bit more of that. But I thought that was an interesting to go off tangent here. Like, imagine if Martin Luther King came back to life or he faked his own death.
Yeah.
Or to be more pertinent. Or imagine if Tupac was actually confirmed to be alive this whole time. How society would change if they know that like he was just like chilling out in a place in like Georgia for like 30 years. And like you think about how the civil rights movement like not necessarily like parachuted off the back of him, but like how so much about how we talk about race in America is defined not only by Martin Luther King's stuff in life, but the circumstances of his death and how we carry on in the response to that. So I thought like the idea of like him having to take responsibility really for just fucking off the space. Maybe they didn't have enough time to do that, but I was a bit like they kind of left that on the table, and I'm assuming they'll pick that up again at a later point.
Yeah,
and I also think
maybe
like,
they needed like a couple more episodes.
Yeah, I'd say.
Because you feel like you need to deal with that because that feels like a huge win for the anti-mutant front.
Yeah.
To find out it was fake and how that would look even if they did explain it. There's a few different things like that. Like technically, if you think about it, like Magneto taking the UN Council into space and then yelling at them makes them let him off the hook and allow Genosha to be part of the UN. And I'm like, I'm not sure if that's how it would work. I think that would make him look worse.
Yeah.
So in the same way that like Xavier coming back, you're like, you fucked everything up.
Yeah.
Unbelievably so. And then Magneto at the end, it's like, how is this? Like, surely it's apocalypse now for the mutants, you know?
Yeah.
Going with that, Bastion, I really liked Bastion I liked his background. I liked his like philosophy. I like the weird sci-fi element that he's kind of like part mutant, part sentinel, part human. He's also like kind of the face of the whole thing of like obsolescence. And there's an interesting thing they did in recent X-Men comics of all these possible futures. And like a lot of the time what happens is if humanity succeeds, what ends up happening is that they end up themselves being dominated by machines, you know, so it actually becomes mutants and like organic evolution versus artificial evolution as the two kind of half
like real life.
Yeah, and so the idea of Bastion being the face of that, I thought was interesting. I think by the end he becomes like a fairly typical final boss.
Yeah.
Once Magneto is taken out, thought his build up was better than the conclusion. But again, cool fight.
That's cool enough. Yeah.
What did you think of Bastion?
I'm in the same place. Like, I really liked how he was introduced, and to be honest, like the whole like Sentinel like stuff, I was a bit like, whatever. Okay, like this is fine.
The idea of like
not
remembering who Nimrod is, and then Nimrod turns up and then injects. Was it like a janitor with like a techno-organic virus so that he can make a baby that is a Sentinel baby?
This is peak comic.
Yeah, they're purely fuck the accessibility.
Yeah, just go completely insane with it. And I was like, I'm not gonna fight this. However, we're here. But yeah, like even like the idea of like he makes all these humans like Sentinels. Okay, to get where we need to go to. But for example, in the final episode where they kind of go like, well, how about we make you like, how about we treat you better than the humans treated us and all that shit, and it sort of doesn't really go anywhere, and you're a bit like, wow, okay. Having beaten him, there was a more satisfying conclusion that they could have come to, which they didn't, you know. And I think also like his characterization, the reason the way he is a bit undercooked, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I've had a couple more episodes to flesh him out. Maybe I'd be a bit more into it. But I was more for like the stuff with like Magneto because it feels again more classically X-Men for better or for worse. And I guess like a lot of what he ended up doing was kind of setting up how the second season is going to go, where they're in the future and in the past, I suppose.
Two other things that I feel like we have to address is like one is like the future of like what season 2 holds, the teasers they have at the end, and also the we briefly touched on it, but the Spider-Man cameo.
Yeah,
given the name of this podcast.
Oh yeah, we should watch Spider-Man a little bit. Why don't we start with that? Because I think like that was like the part where I was like, this is what I was worried about them doing, and I'm glad they had some level of restraint. Spider-Man doesn't have a line, which I'm really glad he doesn't. I'm really glad that like Iron Man and Captain America have their place, but it's more in like a thing of like, hey Rogue, don't do that, or whatever. And you can.
But the Cap thing was great. Alice, she just like throws his shield away. Just like, fuck you.
Yeah. And he's like, hey, I have to go run and get that, you know.
Yeah.
Bitch, god damn it. And then the stuff where like in the control room and like all the Sentinels come out. I thought that stuff was fine. I was like, one Spider-Man cameo is enough. We don't have to have him come back as Peter Parker.
Well, I think the interesting thing about that is more that Mary Jane is there.
Yeah.
Because we haven't got to the end of this show of Spider-Man the Animated Series. But there is a question of like, what is Mary Jane's fate, right?
Where the fuck is she?
Yeah. And this just shows them together. And we don't know the specific timeline. Presumably...
We know it's like 1998 or something like that.
Exactly. Well, yeah, so I don't know how much time passes in this show, but if they did a sequel to Spider-Man the Animated Series, it would presumably be called Spider-Man 98, because that's when it finished. So it's in the realm where basically they're saying that those threads have been resolved in some way. Or maybe this happened some other time earlier in Spider-Man's timeline, before the end of his show.
Maybe this is like Felicia Hardy, but like he made her put on a red wig and like a sweater.
Yeah.
You don't look like her enough. Her eyes were blue. Blue, I say.
It's Chameleon. Just making it. Just fucking with him.
Yeah. Or it's Chameleon, like he's got a gun to his head and he's like, yeah, I know, don't change back.
Maybe we'll talk about it in another episode, but it's also interesting thinking about like what Spider-Man 98 could be, because like this show, X-Men 97, it ended up adapting a bunch of like 80s and 90s and early 2000s comics, whereas the original run was a lot more classic stories. So if Spider-Man were to do the same, then that potentially means all kinds of crazy stuff, including clones and, deals with the devil turning into a giant spider and then giving birth to himself, etc.
They don't have the fucking balls to do that. But I think like the chief difference between Spider-Man the animated series and X-Men the animated series, I think, is also like Spider-Man. Well, I mean, like it's kind of illustrated with the fact that like we're gonna see a new Spider-Man cartoon this year called whatever. You don't know, but I don't care. So Spider-Man, that's it, whatever. Right?
Which was going to be part of the MCU, and then they changed it, and now it isn't.
This is kind of my point: is that like Spider-Man is too popular for them to try and do things like this. I think the thing, like you kind of touched upon with X-Men, is that like they're so much their own separate universe that like they can sort of do their own thing and no one will give a shit. And the one argument against having like a similar thing happen with Spider-Man the animated series is that like I think like they would start writing it and then like they turn around and Avi Arad's climbing in through a window to like influence it. I just don't think that there's the appetite to make a good Spider-Man story as is like as much as there is to make like $1 billion. You know, like there's too much exposure, there's too much awareness of the character.
I could see if they had multiple things running at once, and they're just like, this is a different market. Like we got this young Spider-Man over here. Here we do the mature, but like the one for the older audience.
Yeah.
Where it's like a slightly more mature version of a thing that they remember. Like X-Men 97 has proven that formula works. So there is a reason to do that. But X-Men was in a very different place. Like this came through right after them getting the rights back. I don't know when the last cartoon was.
Or the X-Men my series.
No, like when oh man. Like X-Men series, right? Like there was some X-Men related stuff like Legion, which was like technically X-Men related. But like the last actual X-Men TV series, I believe, was the anime they did in 2011. And before that, Wolverine and the X-Men, which was 2009. And before that, X-Men Evolution. So that's like a full-on, like over like a decade.
It's pre-Avengers.
No X-Men. But also, that's the same amount of time. In that time, the last X-Men game that came out, I think, was what were they called? Those X-Men games, X-Men Legends. Do you remember those? They're like you know, like Marvel Ultimate Alliance.
Yeah,
it's like that style.
Okay.
The last one of those was like 2009 or something, and then they've appeared in a couple of things. Like you get a couple of X-Men in like Marvel vs. Capcom. And like Marvel Rivals and stuff like that. But like they haven't been an X-Men game. And X-Men had 1 million games in the 90s and early 2000s. Feels like there was this big gap where it was just the movies.
Yeah.
And now Marvel have got the rights back and maybe they'll start doing them again. Like Spider-Man, on the other hand, there's been like nothing but there's been too much Spider-Man since then. So there's a lot of things to clash with, like brand-wise, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I could see them not doing it. I feel like it's an easy win though that they're stupid for not doing it, because I feel like people have a lot of nostalgic memories of Spider-Man the animated series, even if they haven't seen it in a while. So it'd be kind of
true.
It's like a missed thing to do. I would enjoy it if the same amount of care went into it as did in this show, but you know.
The question I'd have then is like assuming like Avi Arad takes away the restraining order. But would you want John Stepper Jr. back for that stuff? Because I think
if John Stepper Jr. didn't come back, he's gonna like cause a public incident. You know,
he's gonna call a bomb threat in.
He's been like telling people, I made this show. He would definitely at least have to be like a consultant. But at the same time, like I would like someone to come in who had like a crazy good modern pitch in the same way that Bo DeMeyer did, coming in with his pitch to Kevin Feige. I would rather them come in with that angle to have a through line of like, what is this show about? The same way that X-Men 97 had, rather than just like, what if Spider-Man came back and this time the Sandman was there? I don't know if that's enough. And if something had to be continued, I think the one, we've said this before, the one that should be continued is Spectacular Spider-Man. That was a show that deserved a continuation more
time than it got. Yeah.
Our thing, end of X-Men 97, you have half the team get sent to the future, where they're meeting what looks to be potentially like a child Nathan / Cable. Yeah. And then the rest are sent to the past, where they meet baby Apocalypse in ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
This was quite surprising to me. I feel like I got so much from this season. Like, I'm not putting all bets on like the next season delivering in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is, I won't go into detail about it because it's very complicated. But
I assume
Odemeyer, you know what happened with him?
Oh yeah, he had his online subscription service, and Disney was like, "No, that's too gay," and they fired him.
Well, it's complicated because you never know, like the kind of PR that like Disney has versus a guy means that it's easier for them to make him look worse. And obviously, they're a gay black man working in with such a large property. Well, I'm sure there was difficulty, but there's some complicated stuff where he got fired. He wrote season 2, so season 2 is already written and planned out by him. He said the end of season 2 he pitched, and they were like, "Nah, we want to change that." And then he got fired, but he wasn't allowed to say why. But he was legally allowed to tweet about the show, so he was tweeting about stuff as it was airing. And then everyone was kind of like, why did this guy get fired? He made this show that everyone really likes. Yeah. What's the big deal? And then eventually came out that there was sexual misconduct of some sort. But it just sounded very complicated because he denies a lot of stuff and nothing has come out officially as far as I'm aware. Last thing I checked, I feel like the general opinion was that he was someone who had been rightfully fired. And he shouldn't have been kicking the hornet's nest by keep bringing it up afterwards.
Oh, really?
And that was the kind of take I got, but I was rereading about it earlier and it seemed less clear to me. So I feel like people should do their own research on it because I don't have a definitive thing to say about that. And you never really know what's going on behind the scenes, but like some shit occurred. There was a messy firing. So I don't know what the fuck is going on, but I just know, just purely from the basis of the quality of the show, I think he did a good job. And so,
yeah,
there's presumably going to be good writing in the second season.
You'd hope.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't really know where they go from here. I don't really know. Apocalypse was never a favorite of mine, so I'm not like stoked about him. The future stuff with, because I think there's a alternate timelines where like, Nathan Summers becomes like a different guy.
Not Cable.
This is stuff that I'm a complete blind spot for me as a reader. So I have no idea what it could be, but I'm also like, I'm happy if this is the only good one. I'm gonna watch the second season for sure. I'm not gonna go in expecting it to be as good.
I had a thing with the end of the show where like they show the cliffhangers. I was a bit like, yeah, who gives a shit? I kind of don't care. And it's one of those things where like, if I do something, I'll watch it and I'll be like, yeah, that's fine. But a bit like Watchmen, a bit like The Penguin, I'm kind of like, if this was one and done, you decided not to do a second one, I would be okay with that.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know how far you can take a show where the whole concept is you revived like a show from the 90s, and I don't know how far you take that. It always kind of rang to me as sort of as like a novelty. So I'm a bit like, well, we'll see how much this goes, and I'll try as much as it's here. But yeah, I don't know if it's something they're gonna like invest in time in for the foreseeable 5 or 6 years, you know. So whatever comes.
Yeah, I agree. I have 2 more criticisms to offer, which is number 1, this is a huge plot hole ding on the sins number in the corner. Forge makes a bison chili for Storm, and then they go out horse riding, and that's a terrible idea. And that is probably like one of the worst things to eat before riding at high speeds around the desert.
She had a storm in her pants that day. It was the best I can offer.
She was feeling the winds again.
Yeah.
The other thing is, in the Mojo episode with the video games, there's the final boss against Magneto, which is very similar to the X-Men arcade game. I loved all the art style in the episode. It was great. But Magneto turns up and says, "I am Magneto," and everything. He doesn't do the meme. I think they should have done the meme, which is, I'm pretty sure it was the X-Men arcade game. There was this amazing, weird sound bite thing where for some reason Magneto says, "I am Magneto, master of magnet."
I am Magneto, master of magnet. Come, X-Chicken.
I've always loved that so much, and I was so certain it was going to happen, and then they didn't say it. He didn't say master of magnet, and so it's 0 out of 10 from me.
Cancel the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time.
But on that note, I was just like very happy in general with X-Men 97, and I think it was one of the few times when I was like, it was nice to every week to get excited about watching something like this. And the theme kicking in every week, I definitely got this kind of like, oh shit, we're in for something this week kind of vibe.
We're so back.
Yeah, it made me feel like a young man once again. It was a nice glimmer of quality amidst like an avalanche of content.
Mediocrity. No, it was like pleasantly good. It got me like slightly hopeful for like Daredevil season 4 and or Born Again, where I'm like, am I gonna watch these things again? I kind of said before, but I'd be kind of happy like to like have a trade-off of like you can have a Spider-Man movie every like 2 years if you carry on doing things where people give a shit about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, like hopefully this is the start of like there being something watchable on Disney Plus.
I would hope that they do more Marvel animation. That's the other thing. I think a big reason that feels fresh is that it doesn't have anything to do with the MCU. It's not got their designs. It's not those versions of the characters. They're able to draw things in from the comics, so the designs are allowed to go off and plots go in different ways.
The tone is different. The fucking tone is thankfully different.
Even the modern comics are like becoming absorbed into that a little bit more. You know, like they change characters in order to fit the movies a bit more, just so it synergizes better. And it's just like it's worse. It's worse for the quality to make everything so similar. So that was really nice, and I hope that they just do more animated stuff because I think it works better like this.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on this? Anything more to add?
I think we like covered a lot of like what we wanted to say really, and I wanted to ask actually, do you know when season 2 of this will be coming out?
Oh, I have no idea. Let's see. They have confirmed it was like in production, I think. Oh, what I missed this. A few months ago, they confirmed it was going to be in 2026.
Okay.
In time-wise, that's enough time, considering they've already started production on it before the first season came out.
Just another year.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, but like, I'm happy to wait until 2026.
Yeah, me too. It'll be like a nice little bit of like novelty, I guess, by the time it comes out again. So yeah, I'm happy with that.
And other than that, hopefully this year we'll be putting out some more episodes. We obviously had like some big gaps
geographically and otherwise,
and to get back to our usual programming.
Yeah,
and some other fun stuff. I'm gonna see. Listeners, let's place your bets. Let's see if I can get Henry to record a podcast on Madam Web and or Craven the Hunter.
I will not bet money on either of those things, folks. I will not bet money on either of those things.
It'll be an uphill battle. But if you guys didn't listen, we did guest on the Waffle Press podcast for an episode on Madam Web. So we did talk about it there with friend of the show Gina Versa, if you want to check that out. I've also been on a couple of other random episodes of the Waffle Press lately, and will be, I think by the time this comes out, another recording of Darren Jean will come out where we talked about the new Wallace and Gromit film, which, spoilers, is a great time. So have a listen out for that, and then follow us on all the things.
Yeah, all the things. Well, follow like the podcast. I'm not on all the things.
Oh yeah, as always, follow Henry in real life. He lives somewhere in North London. Yeah,
just follow me home one day. I'll probably feed you like a stray cat and we can talk about podcasts some more.
Honestly, you probably would.
Yeah, I probably would. Or send me an email or something like that, or like write me a letter. My mailing details can be found in the request. I've got a PO box you can use. But yeah, no, otherwise, please check out this podcast that we do on Spider-Man the Animated Series, and I assure you that soon we'll start talking about that again. And thank you for tuning in, as always. We'll catch you next time, folks.
I am Magneto, master of magnet.